Hello everybody, happy Memorial Day and welcome to the Mash and Drum Whiskey Room. My name is Jason C, and if you're a subscriber, thanks so much for the support. If you're new to the channel looking for the latest in whiskey and bourbon news and reviews, you have found the right place, so hit that subscribe button below and hit that bell notification so you know when I'm putting out a new video. Now when it comes to American whiskey and bourbon, the first place that comes to mind is usually Kentucky, but now there's a new breed of distillers that have emerged in an unexpected place. Deep in the heart of Texas, there's a world-class whiskey scene pushing the boundaries of creativity and craft. Ironroot Republic is one of those distilleries. From grain to glass, Ironroot Republic has been a standout in the Texas whiskey scene with the award-winning Ironroot Harbinger Bourbon whiskey, which is today's review. Ironroot Republic was founded in Denison, Texas by brothers Robert and Jonathan Licorice. The name Ironroot honors the legacy of a famed citizen of the distillery's hometown and horticulturalist Thomas Volney Munson. Munson pioneered methods in creating phylloxera-resistant vines by grafting European rootstock onto American vines. Using Texas heirloom grains in 10 different mash bills, Ironroot mashes, ferments, barrel ages, and bottles on site. 95% of the grain used in their whiskey is sourced from within 60 miles of the distillery. After double pot still distillation, they utilize varying barrel entry proofs, barrel sizes, and other strategies inspired by French techniques to slow down the maturation process that is accelerated in Texas. Now, what differentiates Texas-made whiskeys or flavors influenced heavily by the climate. Unlike Kentucky, which has 4 complete seasons, Texas can experience 4 seasons in 1 week, sometimes in 1 day. The extremely dry conditions combined with warm temperatures cause the alcohol to expand. That helps it reach deeply into the pores of the wood, which is where roughly 75% of the flavor stems from, and 100% of where the deep, dark colors originate. Now, because of that climate, this leaves Texas whiskeys with a very heavy oak profile. They tend to have a much younger age statement as well. Now, Jonathan Licorice, Ironroot Republic Distilling head distiller, says that Texas distillers typically use pot stills instead of a continuous still favored by distillers we usually find in Kentucky. He also added that the spirit that comes off the pot still tends to be heavier and a bit more viscous. Another interesting fact is that Ironroot also incorporates some cognac-style methods in its whiskey production. One of our mentors, Nancy Fraley, also known in the whiskey world as the Nose, is trained in the classical techniques used to make French brandy, Licorice said. She has guided us to apply this knowledge to not only our distillation methods, but to our maturation and warehousing methods as well. We attribute the lighter, more refined oak profiles and the highly aromatic characteristics of our whiskeys to these techniques. So now with all that info out of the way, this brings us to today's review for Ironroot's flagship bourbon, the Harbinger. The Ironroot Harbinger Straight Bourbon Whiskey is a Texas straight bourbon matured in both virgin American and virgin European oak casks. This expression is non-chill filtered and bottled at 59.25% ABV with no artificial coloring added. The mash bill is made up of 90% yellow corn, 5% purple corn, and 5% bloody butcher corn. This is aged 27 months or a little over 2 years and carries an average price of around $60. So here's a close-up of this beautiful bottle. It's a 750 milliliter, but it looks like there was way more in here. It's a pretty tall standing bottle. I absolutely love the metal red R that's embedded in the bottle. It's bold, it's elegant at the same time, I think. My particular bottle is the 2018 edition. As I mentioned, this is 90% yellow corn, 5% purple corn, and 5% bloody butcher corn. This is bottled at 57.5% ABV and is non-chill filtered. So let's get a pour of this. Now, I've had 2 pours of this already, and I've been pretty impressed, so I couldn't wait to review this for you guys. All right, let's go to Texas. All right, guys, before we get started, I just want to say with gratitude and pride in honor of all of our fallen heroes, veterans, and active service members who defend our freedom and serve our country, I thank you and wish you all a very happy Memorial Day. All right, so let's go into the color here. And as you can see, this is a really dark maple syrup type color profile to it. It's got some like a nice copper color to it as well. I mean, it's amazing for Texas whiskeys. As I mentioned, you know, the age statements on these are pretty young, 2 to 3 years mostly. You see a lot of color that gets pulled from that barrel with that intense heat so quickly. It's really amazing. All right, let's go to the nose. Here we go. All right, so right off the bat, you get some of your typical bourbon notes. It's a little bit more intense here with that Texas heat kind of really amplifying that buttered popcorn. There's a nice kind of a salted caramel note in there too. Yeah, there's an intense vanilla flavor here. As you get kind of deeper into the glass here, you could pick up a really beautiful maple syrup type molasses note. I mean, it's really good on the nose, very sweet. I mean, this is technically 100% corn. You have 90% yellow, 5% purple corn, and 5% bloody butcher corn. So there's a lot of sweetness in there to be found. I mean, this has a ton of just cinnamon, baking spices. And of course, how could I forget that Texas, that dusty Texas oak note that you always get, that I've been getting on a lot of Texas whiskeys. It's the note that I really think sets it apart from Kentucky whiskeys all on its own. It really makes me feel like Texas whiskey it's really its own category. It's pretty amazing. But this is a really intense, bold, sweet, really inviting nose. All right, let's go for the first sip, everybody. Here we go. Cheers. Right off the bat, and this hasn't changed, apple cinnamon. Boom. You get a huge apple cinnamon, like a baked apple cinnamon pie that just kind of takes over your palate. Amazing on the first sip. Really sweet, really viscous. Really coats the palate well on the first sip. Let's go for that second sip and see what we get. Here we go. Cheers. All right. So second sip. Now the vanilla caramel start playing in. That caramel and that apple cinnamon flavor, that apple pie type flavor is kind of takes a little bit of a back seat. And now that famous Texas oak profile starts to take over here, which provides a really nice balance here. But it's sweet, it's oaky. There's definitely a dusty oak type note to it here that I really, really like. It really balances that sweetness well. I think you kind of need that, being that this is just made with 3 different types of corn. So let's go for another sip and see what we get. Cheers. Wow, so if I compare this to other Texas whiskeys I've had, that dusty oak note that I've gotten on others, it's a little bit more subdued here. It actually comes across more as a little bit of a spice, which I really like. And I'm guessing that I think that has to do with using the European and the American oak casks. European oak tends to offer a little bit of a spice kick to it, whereas the American oak really pulls in those caramels, vanillas, that sweetness. But I really like the spice that I'm getting here as well, right on the back end. There's a big cinnamon note right on the back of the palate. You're getting some cinnamon, you're getting some pepper. It's a really well balanced flavor profile here from front to back. Let's go for another sip here. Cheers. Yeah, and this one's staying very consistent too, which you know if you watch my channel, I love consistency in a bourbon. As you keep just sipping on it, those flavors just stay, nothing gets flat. If anything, it gets more balanced as you sip on it. I think the first couple sips, it comes off as really sweet. But then as you keep sipping on it, that spice, that oak, that cinnamon flavor, that pepperiness that kind of sticks around the back of your palate, the different types of corns all kind of work together here to give you a sweet, spicy, and oaky flavor profile. It's a really great bourbon. I'm really loving it. Let's go on for one final sip here. We'll talk about the finish. Cheers. Oh, so now in the finish. Now this happened to me on the first couple sips I had of this, but it's getting a little bit more intense. I'm getting more of a leather tobacco note on the end, a little more of a nuttiness characteristic right on the finish. And I'm gonna guess, but I think that's coming from that bloody butcher corn. It's an heirloom type of corn that I've seen distillers using more and more. It's a more savory corn rather than sweet. I do know it has more protein and lower starch than typical yellow corn, which adds, I think, a little bit more of an earthy and nutty characteristic to it. It's really good. I am getting that a little bit on the finish, I think. It's really good. It's very sweet. The finish is pretty medium to long. It's vanilla, it's sweet. It's got that dusty oak to it. This is it's big, it's bold, it's a very sweet, delicious bourbon, and I would highly recommend this to anyone. All right, guys, so overall, I'm really loving this bourbon. I think it delivers an extremely consistent flavor profile. Sweet, oaky, dusty a little bit there. You get that apple, that cinnamon. You get some, you get a nice peppery finish there. It also offers if you're into those leathery tobacco notes, a little bit of a nuttiness characteristic. It just is a really well-rounded bourbon. I feel like the more you sip it, to me, Texas whiskeys, I think, are almost like a modern-day dusty bourbon. Now, if you've had bourbons and whiskeys before the turn of the century, there's almost a dusty oak character to it that goes hand in hand with some really beautiful, sweet butterscotch flavors. And I feel like you can get that type of experience in a Texas whiskey. The flavors will be different, but that dusty oak and sweet characteristic is enough for Texas whiskey to live in its own category. So for $60, and compared to a lot of new craft bourbons hitting the market that are more expensive, I think if you're a cask strength bourbon fan and you're also trying to get into some Texas whiskey, this is a must try or a must have. All right, everybody. Well, thanks again for watching the Mash and Drum Whiskey Room. I really appreciate you coming by and watching this review for the Ironroot Harbinger Bourbon out of Texas. Really hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button below. Please hit that like button. If you haven't yet, find me on Instagram and also find me on Twitter. Let me know if you guys have had the Ironroot Harbinger, what you think of it. And like I always say, it is not about the whiskey. It is the people you share it with. So happy Memorial Day, everybody, and have a great day. Cheers.